Scattered in the countryside of modern-day Turkey are the ruins of the ancient Roman and Byzantine empires. From Alexander the Great to Constantine the Great, the empires of the Hellenistic and Roman worlds have left remnants of their cities throughout Turkey. Today, the modern traveler to Turkey can visit ancient sites offering a fascinating glimpse into life as it was thousands of years ago. A glimpse into Roman culture that eventually formed the foundation of modern Western civilization. This program will take you to some of the most awe-inspiring ruins found anywhere, including locations where 3 of the 7 wonders of the ancient world once stood. The Roman heritage of modern Turkey begins at the very birth of the Roman Empire. In 27 BC, the Roman Empire was established by its first emperor, Augustus. In the 300 years afterwards, the Roman Empire had grown too large and difficult to rule from the city of Rome. In 284 AD, the Emperor Diocletian decided to divide the Roman Empire into the East and West, with each region ruled by its own emperor. The Eastern Empire was governed out of Byzantium, and the Western Empire from Rome. Both regions were known equally as the Roman Empire. By 312 AD, Constantine I became emperor of the Western Empire. A year later, he would issue an edict that legalized Christianity for the first time, and Constantine became the first Christian emperor of Rome. It was 324 AD when the East and West were united again in a civil war that resulted in Constantine taking control of the eastern half of the empire. He then moved the capital of the newly united Roman Empire from the city of Rome to the newly named city of Constantinople. In time, the eastern half of the empire would adopt Greek in place of Latin, and its character would evolve away from the traditional Latin empire. Eventually, the empire would divide again and exist as 2 halves of the same empire for another 150 years, until 476 AD when the Goths invaded Rome and removed the last Western emperor from power. By 555 AD, the Emperor Justinian had partially restored the former Roman Empire. This extended the Byzantine Empire to its greatest size until 634 AD, when Muslim armies began their centuries-long assaults by storming into Syria. Today, remnants of the Byzantine Empire are found in modern Turkey. Our journey begins here in Yalikavak, a small town on the Aegean coast of Turkey. For most of its 3,000 years, Yalikavak has been a sponge and fishing village. Today, with a population of close to 10,000 people, its focus has changed to tourism. The small town has its traditional market area, and on Thursdays, it hosts a regional market that attracts buyers from all over the region with bargains on everything from clothing to hardware. There are several boat tours from the port in town to areas around the peninsula. The boats typically stop at points of interest where you can swim in absolutely clear, tideless, warm seas. Divers especially can explore the numerous reefs, caves, and majestic rock formations populated with multicolored sponges of all shapes and sizes, octopi, and an immense variety of other aquatic life. Surrounded by the Turkish city of Bodrum are ruins of the ancient Greek city of Halicarnassos. In Roman times, this was the site of the mausoleum of Halicarnassos. Built as a tomb and shrine to King Mausolus by his grieving wife Artemisia, it earned a place as one of the wonders of the ancient world. According to the Roman writer Pliny the Elder, the tomb was 140 feet high, had a peristyle of 36 columns, and a stepped pyramid roof. Mounted at its highest level was a chariot pulled by 4 horses, all in carved marble. Other remnants can be seen here in the British Museum in London. These friezes from the mausoleum were unearthed over a century ago. The monument was richly colored as evidence from traces of pigment found on several surviving sculptures from the site. Completed around 350 BC, the structure stood for centuries until a catastrophic earthquake brought it to ruin. During the Crusades of the late 1400s, the Knights of St. John dismantled much of the mausoleum to build a fortified castle from which to control the region. Their castle of St. Peter still stands today, and within it can be found many artifacts taken from the mausoleum of Halicarnassos. In Bodrum, the summer months attract tourists to its perpetually sunny skies and hot weather. This is the place where the Aegean and the Mediterranean seas meet. Until the late 1960s, this was a fishing village, now transformed by international air travel into a major tourist destination. Along the thin beaches lining the Aegean are a steady lineup of restaurants and bars. A landmark at the western seaport is a great example of medieval architecture, the Castle of St. Peter. Built by the Knights Hospitaller, it remained in use until the fall of the Crusader headquarters in Rhodes in 1522. Another of the original 7 wonders of the ancient world, the Colossus of Rhodes stood for only 56 years. Yet it was so impressive it gained a place as one of the truly magnificent structures of the ancient world. The Colossus was basically a gigantic statue that watched over the harbor of Rhodes. It stood about 33 meters high before an earthquake toppled it. In the 7th century, the fragments of the Colossus were transported on the backs of 900 camels to Syria, where they were sold as scrap. Like many islands in the Mediterranean, Rhodes has a multicultural history that included Greeks, Romans, Persians, Byzantines, Crusaders, and Ottomans ruling the island. The Hospitaller Knights occupied the island for over 200 years and left behind this magnificent castle. Rhodes Castle was the headquarters for the Crusaders making their way to the Holy Lands. The castle they built is massive in size. The moat itself is, in places, more than 100 feet wide. The walls, built to withstand any siege, were modeled after the Theodosian walls of Constantinople. Inside the walls is the entire old town of Rhodes, the oldest inhabited medieval town in Europe. The town is a mosaic of different cultures and civilizations. Fortress-like buildings, tranquil and busy squares give Rhodes a unique character resplendent with old-world charm. Rhodes fell to the Ottoman Turks in 1523 and then again to Italy in 1912. It wasn't until after the Second World War that Rhodes became Greek again. In 1988, the medieval city of Rhodes was listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Like Rhodes and Bodrum, the Greek island of Kos was a base for crusaders in the Middle Ages. Falling to the Turks, it was part of the Ottoman Empire for almost 400 years until it was occupied by Italy in 1912. The Italians are largely responsible for developing the infrastructure of the island, especially after a ruinous earthquake in 1933. A new city plan was then created that transformed the city with modern urban planning. In 1943, Nazi Germany occupied Kos and proceeded to execute 100 Italian officers for refusing to join the German forces. This was the start of a very dark 2-year period for the island. Like Rhodes, Kos became part of Greece in 1948. It took as long as 120 years to build and may have been the first building to be completely constructed of marble. The Temple of Artemis at Ephesus was completed around 300 BC to honor the daughter of Zeus and twin sister of Apollo. Records reveal the temple was roughly 4 times the size of the Parthenon on the Acropolis in Athens. Destroyed by the Goths in 268 AD, it was never rebuilt. For centuries, Ephesus was a thriving seaport in the Roman province of Asia and the second largest city in the Roman Empire, with a population of 300,000 people. When boats from Italy and Greece would arrive at the harbor, travelers would enter the city along this grand avenue called the Arcadian Way that ended at the Great Theatre. With seating for 25,000, the Great Theatre was huge by Roman standards and is still known for its excellent acoustics today. A short walk from the Great Theatre along the street known as the Marble Way is the finely restored Library of Celsus. Built in the time of Emperor Hadrian, this library held 12,000 scrolls and was known all over the Roman Empire for its architecture. The library had 3 entrance doorways flanked by 4 statues set back in niches. To the right is the Gate of Augustus, leading to the Agora, or Roman market. Celsus, for whom the library is named, was a revered Roman governor of Ephesus. His body is entombed under the library in a lead coffin. Up the hill from the library are the hillside villas where the wealthy of Ephesus lived. The mosaic floors and wall decorations have been painstakingly restored and offer a glimpse into the lives of the equestrian classes, the business owners that lived there. The Temple of Hadrian, built in 118 AD, has the head of Medusa as its most famous attribute. Ephesus has a strong link to early Christianity. It's the city where the Apostle Paul preached and wrote his letter to the Ephesians. The Apostle John lived and died here. And perhaps most importantly, Mary, the mother of Jesus, moved here after the crucifixion and lived the rest of her life here. This house in Ephesus has been officially recognized by the Vatican as the residence of the Virgin Mary. In the last century, 2 Catholic popes have visited this house. Like the great city of Ephesus, Miletus was an important port city for the Roman Empire until its harbor filled with silt. The city was eventually abandoned in the 6th century AD. This theater was originally built in the 4th century BC and 6 centuries later enlarged by the Emperor Trajan to the 15,000 seat capacity you see here. In the center of the first 2 rows are 4 columns signifying a special box for emperors. This was the site of the colossal harbor monument. The circular base once held a 25-foot tripod featuring a cauldron at the top. These Ionic columns are part of the remains of the northern agora. Completed in the 3rd century AD, this market street was 500 feet long with 64 columns and 30 shops. This entrance leads to the extensive Baths of Faustina, built by the wife of Marcus Aurelius in 164 AD. The large complex featured water fountains, semi-private baths, and the Hall of the 9 Muses. The wall decorations included depictions of gladiators in battle. This pool was the Frigidarium, or cold pool. It was the first of 3 pools a person was expected to bathe in. The next 2 pools were filled with warm and then hot water, respectively. "2,000 years ago, Lake Baffa was a part of the Aegean Sea, a bay that slowly turned into a lake. Populating this area of the lake are the remains of Byzantine monasteries that were built by Christian monks. Christians escaping Sinai and southern Arabia sought refuge here in the 7th and 8th centuries AD. The Byzantines built a 6-kilometer-long defensive wall in the hills surrounding the monasteries. Amongst the ruins are dozens of ancient Carian rock tombs that predate the Roman Empire. The lake itself is a nature reserve and home to a remarkable variety of plant and animal species. Named after Aphrodite, the goddess of love, Aphrodisias was surrounded by quarries of exceptional marble. From those quarries, artists carved out beautiful sarcophagi, sculptures, and building facades. The splendid marble attracted the best sculptors from around the Roman Empire, and Aphrodisias became famous in the Roman world for its quality of stonework. This Augusteum was built as a structure of worship for the Emperor Augustus. The family of Julius Caesar, which included Octavian Augustus, claimed to be descended from Aphrodite. Typical of Roman cities is this Odeon, which was used for city council meetings and musical performances. Before succumbing to an earthquake, this Odeon featured a roof with tall windows and seated more than 1,700 people. This iconic structure in Aphrodisias is a monumental gateway known as the Tetrapylon. It was built around 200 AD and stands in front of a large courtyard in front of the Temple of Aphrodite. This stadium is one of the best preserved arenas of its kind in the Mediterranean region. 30,000 people once filled these seats to witness athletic contests modeled on the games of ancient Greece. One end of the stadium was later modified for smaller audiences to attend circuses and wild beast shows. This great stadium drew patrons from all over the surrounding region. Yielding to Christian beliefs, the city was renamed Stauropolis by the Byzantines in the 7th century. This World Heritage Site has been a tourist attraction for thousands of years. In Roman times, people journeyed to these hot springs from all over the empire, believing the water had healing properties. The Turks call this place Pamukkale, which means cotton castle in Turkish. The terraces you see here are made of travertine, a sedimentary rock deposited by water from the hot springs. The temperature of the water averages around 35 degrees Celsius, but can be as hot as 100 degrees Celsius at its source. Overlooking the travertine terraces of Pamukkale is the ancient Roman city of Hierapolis, built along the hillside. The Theatre of Hierapolis is its most outstanding structure. It was built during the time of Hadrian and is one of the best preserved ancient theaters in the world. The stage buildings have been mostly restored and feature detailed reliefs. 20,000 spectators could attend performances here, and there was reserved seating for distinguished guests in the front row. This theater remained in use well into the 14th century. Torba is a picturesque seaside village near Yalikavac and Bodrum. Surrounded by olive groves and pine forests, the crystal-clear bay at Torba is teeming with fish, sea turtles, and dolphins. Just past the beaches along the shoreline are cafes, open-air restaurants, and a major resort. However, the village still retains a relaxed, rural ambiance despite the tourism. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire, most of Europe descended into the Dark Ages. During that time, the Eastern Empire continued to evolve Roman culture and technology. The ruins left behind by the Byzantine Empire reveal well over 1,000 years of stunning achievements in artistry, culture, and engineering. And Turkey remains an ideal place from which to discover these lost treasures of the Eastern Roman Empire.
There's only one man. One man